Oh, motherfucker, you can't have my cornbread, that's for damn sure. Because if you try to take my cornbread, part 2 of my killing spree gonna begin up in here on your ass right now. If you think about my cornbread, they get the taste out your mouth, that's for damn sure. Now, fuck him, fuck that, because I'm from New York City, goddammit. Nobody take no cornbread from me. And that goes for you and any other you motherfucking farmers wanna try some shit. You fuck around with me, it's gonna be consequences and repercussions.
What up, y'all? What's poppin'? It's your boy Trey Fraser here in the house, y'all, riding dolo tonight. You're listening to the Barbershop Sports Talk Podcast, live right here on the Barbershop Sports Talk Podcast website. That is barbershopsportstalkpodcast.com. Make sure y'all check us out on the Facebook page. Also, you can hit us up on Twitter at barbershopspor2. And also on Instagram at Barbershop Sports Talk Podcast. And like I said before, I'm riding solo tonight. Maestro Styles is under the weather right now, so it's just going to be your homie for the next hour. Hopefully the next hour, since it's been sort of a slow sports week, but, you know, some things popped up earlier today that I'm going to definitely talk about. And I do have a special guest coming on the phone with me in about 30 minutes. Most of you guys have heard him before on this platform. He goes by the name of the Hispanic Causing Panic. He goes by the mayor of Billionsburg. That's my homie right there. He's from Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Went to high school with him, formerly of the Politics and Bird Shit podcast. So I'm going to have him on in about 30 minutes or so to kind of talk about some of the stuff that's been going on in New York sports. And of course, I'm going to get his reaction on the situation with Spike Lee and the New York Knicks that happened earlier today. And you'll get my response as well to that. So I just want to get into a few things first, man, before I get into some sports, really, man. There's been a lot of happenings. There's been a lot of deaths lately in the year 2020. And we had some events happen over the past week that I want to send some shout outs to people who've lost loved ones, folks that have died in situations like what I'm about to talk about. So without, stopping and, going further, I just want to shout out the victims of the tornado that hit through downtown Nashville, Tennessee, late last night. It was about a little bit after midnight. Actually saw some pictures on the website, also through the news platform earlier this morning. And from what I read, there were about 40 different buildings that collapsed. I'm not talking skyscrapers here. I'm just talking, regular 4-story, 6-story buildings that collapsed downtown in that area over there. And the damage looked brutal. I gotta say, a tornado, that's what it does. It rips through neighborhoods and it leaves a lot of damage behind. So, if you're one of the victims that's gotta find shelter, shout out to you for surviving it, one, and for two, whatever future it may hold for you, whether you gotta rebuild your house or find another place to live. I hope you can do that. I know that a couple of the sports teams that play in Nashville, with the most popular one being the Titans, some of their players have kind of put in some relief efforts to get people to places of shelter, which is, pretty dope on their part. And then also, I believe the Nashville Predators have put together a welcoming to people that are looking for places right now in their arena right there downtown. I forget the name of the arena, but I think that's pretty dope on their part also. And then I think you have Vanderbilt University doing some things in relief to kind of help those people as well. So, again, shout out to, the families that were affected and, to the 6 people that lost their lives in that horrific tornado. May you guys rest in peace. A couple other things happened, tragically. And these 2 instances pertain to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In case y'all didn't know, and I'm not surprised that this story was swept under the rug, but there was a mass shooting in Milwaukee at I don't know if it's the Miller Lite Brewery or, one of those beer distillery brewery places. I can't remember the name of it, but there was a mass shooting last week. And actually, it happened Friday, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the Milwaukee Bucks had a night game because I watched that game. And I know they had a moment of silence for the victims there. So this was 5 victims total. All of them were white, I think with the exception of one Hispanic person there. The interesting thing about this mass shooting, a couple things. Number one, it was first reported. And then for some reason, when you tried to turn on CNN, Fox News, or, hell, ABC News, they wouldn't talk about it. And I wondered why this particular mass shooting was kind of swept under the rug. And one of the reasons that I found out is that the shooter was a black man. And there were stories about, and, before I get into that, this black man who eventually turned the gun in on himself and shot himself. This man worked for the brewery down there. And there were reports that this guy made claims that some of the co-workers who were shot and killed in this incident were being harassing towards this black man. In other words, this was a racial kind of a situation where he reported it to the HR department that, hey, I'm being harassed racially here. I don't like what's going on here. You guys got to do something. And that these claims were never followed through by the HR department. So you had that. And the next thing you know, the guy gets fired, goes and gets a gun. I don't know if this happened the same day or not, but long story short, guy gets fired, gets a gun, comes back to the place of business, and then kills the 5 people again. 4 of them were white. I think 1 was Hispanic. And I gotta tell you, man, this whole narrative of NRA and gun control and all this good stuff, I guess this only becomes a story when it comes to mass shootings that involve white shooters, because I got to tell you, the media, the mainstream media, was very quiet about this situation. And as much as I want to be in an uproar about things like this, disclaimer here, I can't be surprised anymore, because 1, it doesn't fit the narrative that the media wants to portray. Whenever it's a black man who is the shooter, it's always, well, then that plays to a person's mentals, I believe. So, in that case, you had that, and then also there was this other story that came out where the black man's wife and family were supporters of Elizabeth Warren, and in case folks don't know, Elizabeth Warren is one of the candidates to run on the Democratic side for president later this year. Look, I don't care about that stuff. I don't care who supports who. At the end of the day, nobody wins in situations like this. Lives were lost. The shooter shot himself. Families are affected. Someone lost their parent, their husband, their wife, brother, sister. Someone lost somebody. And I don't know how many of these guys were like the breadwinners for their family, But if so, that's a big loss for families like this. So I could care less what the shooter's family's allegiance to a particular president, candidate for president. I don't care about, stuff like that. And so I do want to point out that the mainstream media, they swept this under the rug because the shooter wasn't white. They turned this into, it's just another regular old shooting in a, almost predominantly black city in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up, and this is kind of, hits close to home here. So, me and my wife, we have a friend named Danielle. We sometimes call her Sissy. But she lives in our neighborhood, not far from us, but, close to us. She was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for disclaimer there. So she lost her dad maybe a month or two ago, rest in peace. And also, if not yesterday, I believe the day before, I saw her put a post on Facebook that one of her cousins who started a food truck in Milwaukee was a victim to police violence, to a police shooting, I should say. And I just so happened to research the story on the web, and I was able to get some local news people in Milwaukee on their website. And the story doesn't get that much traction. And quite frankly, I'm not even sure at this point that they've even released the name of our friend's cousin in Milwaukee. But because he was so close to people there, they were able to relay messages to certain family members, including our friend, that, hey, this happened and it was unfortunate, but something went down and it wasn't good. So I just want to send some love to Sissy and her family for the loss of their cousin, who turned out to be an entrepreneur in his own right with the food truck. And according to one of the news reports, it looked like he was pretty close with a person in business as far as owning this nightclub or some kind of lounge or something of that nature. And so, just want to say rest in peace to that brother right there, for losing his life. And, again, this epidemic of police shootings, with black men in this country is just, it's just ongoing, and it just doesn't seem like it's going to stop soon. So shout out to them, man. And shout out again to all the victims of natural disasters, shootings, that kind of a thing. Much love to the families for doing that. So just want to say what up to the chat room here. Of course, we got a chat room on barbershopsportstalkpodcast.com. You can just click on the chat bubble right there, and it'll take you to the chat room. Just want to shout out the homie Big Kev 303, repping the Denver area. So I appreciate you joining in this evening, brother. Appreciate you always. I guess, I struggled with a couple of names for the episode tonight because, as I said in the beginning, this was a very slow sports week where nothing really was jumping off that was like really eye-popping. I know the Spike Lee thing went down earlier today. Maybe I wanted to give a little bit of, notoriety to that. And so I just decided, you know what, man, it's March. It's a brand new month. We're just getting out of February. Shout out to Black History Month. Always goes by quick. It's never long enough. This is the time of year for sports. March Madness is coming. Free agency in the NFL is coming. The playoffs for the NBA, that'll be in April. And if you're a hockey fan, playoffs is, around the corner as well. Baseball season actually starts, I think, March 26th. So, there's a lot of things up on the horizon in terms of the sports. February is always like that slow month for sports All-Star weekend in the NBA. The NHL's got their little All-Star game. We're coming off the Super Bowl, so, there's kind of like a dead period after being fed football for about 4 or 5 months throughout the season. So March is here, and I got to tell you, I am looking forward to a few things, and I want to get your take too. Folks out there listening, you guys want to get in the chat room, again, barbershopsportstalkpodcast.com. Click on the episode, and it'll take you right to the chat room, and, let me know what you think, man. It's March. What are you guys looking forward to? I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to. There's a few things. The Maryland Terps, and, me and Maestro were big-time Terps supporters here. Obviously, we live in Maryland, so, we support the Terps whenever they're good. They're having a really good year this year. And, say what you want about Coach Turgeon, but he's got these guys playing at a pretty high level right now. They're sitting atop the Big Ten, one of the tougher conferences in all of college basketball, right there with the Michigans and the Michigan States, and when with other teams in other conferences, you look at Duke, you look at a team like Dayton, who just kind of came out of nowhere. I know they're ranked like number 3 right now in the top 25. San Diego State is right there in the top 5 as well. And I tell you, because of the fact that there's not a team that really scares anybody right now in college basketball, I got to tell you, the Terps right now have a legitimate shot to make a run through this tournament. And if I had to put a ceiling on how far they could go, they could be one of the final 2 teams in this tournament. Look, Duke isn't what Duke, normally is. I mean, they're still good. I mean, Coach K's still there. He's, the face of the program, but they're not dominant. North Carolina's not dominant. Villanova with Jay Wright, they're not dominant. There's not a real dominant team that kind of stands out right now. And then you got the defending champion Virginia Cavaliers. I don't think they're even ranked in the top 25, the last time I checked. So you got a lot of teams that's like bunched right now that, I mean, you could make a shot for, I would say, about 15 teams right now that could legitimately pose a threat to win the whole thing. Now, when you look at coaches, obviously Tom Izzo is a coach you should never count out. Jay Wright, who's got 2 championships with Villanova, you never count that guy out. Always North Carolina with Roy Williams, you gotta throw him in there. You gotta throw Duke in there. And maybe even Bill Self with Kansas. I forgot about Kansas and, what they've done this year. You can never count those teams out when it comes to the tournament, because those coaches have a lot of pedigree to their name. Now, does that mean that Maryland can't, get, to the Elite 8, Final 4, Final 2, whatever? No, it doesn't certainly mean that. It just means that right now everybody's got a shot. I think all the coaches that have been in championship moments in the past are going to find a way to coach these guys up when the lights shine brightest. I do have one concern for the Terps, and that's just sometimes the ability to just have these lapses through games sometimes. Now, they had a big comeback win against Minnesota the other day. Big time win. I believe they had a big time win against Indiana about a month ago. So they've been able to kind of put together some wins where you thought, okay, this team's just going to pack it in and it's on to the next game. No. They've been able to come from behind. They've been able to make some clutch shots when it counts. And to me, this is probably the best Maryland Terps basketball team that I've seen from a coached Mark Turgeon team. Like, since Turgeon's been there, this is probably the best team he's had. And really, this is probably their best shot to really make something happen down the stretch here. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the tournament and kind of seeing how that shakes out. I'm looking forward to who's going to be seated where, because also that's important for the Terps. Are they a number 2 seed, based on where they're at right now? I think they're ranked number 7 out of the top 25 right now. Where are they going to be seated? Where are some of these other teams that you would think they'd be dominant but not necessarily present that regular season dominance? Where are they going to be seated? So I'm looking forward to March Madness, and that's in a couple of weeks. They'll have Selection Sunday, and then they'll get off with like the first 64, or is it 6? No, it's 68. I keep forgetting they added the 2 playing games. So you got the 2 playing games. I think one's Tuesday, the other one's that Wednesday, and then the real tournament starts Thursday with a whole bunch of games, and that's going to be pretty exciting. So I'm definitely looking forward to March Madness for certain. The other thing I'm looking forward to this month in March is NFL free agency, and I believe the league year starts on March 18th. I think I overheard that earlier today. Let me give a quick shout out. I'm in the chat room here. I got Professor X, aka Kesey, repping the X Squad, who is the face of the X Squad. Just want to say what up, man, and appreciate your support for us here on the podcast tonight. NFL free agency. I'm definitely looking forward to this. So I got a couple things, and I saw a couple of things last week that kind of caught my attention even before teams really start to make moves. So in terms of the franchise tag, so with the Cincinnati Bengals, right? AJ Green, who's 31 years old, who's coming off of this injury, the Bengals are looking to put the tag on AJ Green. Now, immediately when I saw that, I was thinking to myself, like, why are you trying to, like, keep this guy? Like, AJ Green is quietly one of the better receivers in the game, and you hate to see a guy like that be stuck on a team that, probably isn't going to contend for a championship no time soon. See, players like that, I love to see players like AJ Green, and even though he's killed my Ravens over the years, in terms of the talent, in terms of performance, those are the types of guys you want to see play on playoff contending teams, potential championship contending teams. So I didn't like the fact that news about the Bengals came out, was that they were going to put the tag on him. But after giving it about a day or two thought about it, I said, you know what? Maybe this is the right thing for the Bengals to do. And here's why I say that. They're going to draft Joe Burrow. Or at least all signs point to the fact that they're going to draft Joe Burrow with the number 1 pick in the draft in April. And Joe Burrow is going to need a veteran-type receiver to kind of, help him, give him that veteran presence. Something like how Reggie Wayne was to Andrew Luck when Andrew Luck got drafted. I'm trying to think of other examples, and some isn't coming up to me right away, but that's the one example that I could, think of right now. But you guys get my point. The Bengals could use the veteran leadership of AJ Green, even though, historically the Bengals, they compete for playoff spots, and then once they get there, it's like they don't want to advance in the playoffs. But if you're moving in a different direction, if Joe Burrow is your guy, you want to keep AJ Green around because he's going to be the veteran presence that's going to help Joe Burrow starting off on the right foot. As a franchise, that's what you want for your rookie quarterback. So I gave it some thought, and I thought, you know what, okay, this makes sense. I think they need to go ahead and, make that happen. The other thing that came out earlier today was the Jaguars, and I tell you what, man, the Jaguars are just dismantling this great defense from a couple of years ago, where it's just like, wow, like they had that one season, it was 10-6, it was 2017, they in the playoffs, they beat the Bills by a low score, and then they go into Pittsburgh, and they just basically just not so much blow the doors off the Steelers, but they drop 44, 45 points on the Steelers in Pittsburgh, and then you get to the title game against New England, and if it wasn't for them not being aggressive enough toward the end of that second half, the Jaguars might have been playing for a Super Bowl championship. But since then, they've been 5-11. Blake Bortles has been trash. They come into last season, they signed Nick Foles to a deal. They trade Jalen Ramsey, which was sort of the first domino on defense to kind of fall. And as that season was going along, it started to chip away, and then Coughlin gets put up out of there, and now Ngakoue doesn't want to be there, even though they say they want to put the tag on him. And now you got this trade that went down where A.J. Bouye gets traded to the Broncos for a draft pick. So obviously the Broncos need, some help in the secondary, so that's a good move for the Broncos. But as far as for the Jaguars, they're just kind of breaking this whole defense apart. The fact that the offense over the last couple of years for Jacksonville was not as good was just as frustrating to the defense because they had to watch that offense go 3 and out a bunch of times, and then they just spent too much time on the field. Jalen Ramsey didn't want to be there because Coughlin was in his old school ways, and then you got Ngakoue, wanting out, which, I think could kind of turn into a Le'Veon Bell situation, even with the threat of him being tagged, and then this trade goes down. So if you're Jacksonville, I think at this point, and I've also heard that they want to trade Nick Foles, which, wouldn't be such a bad idea. Good luck trying to find somebody to, eat that money up. They got to go in a different direction. I hate to say it, but, they had that one good 10-6 year a couple years ago, and that was all she wrote after that. And if you're Jacksonville, you kind of cleaned house in the front office a little bit. I know you kept Marone as your coach, but this is just a totally different direction now. It's essentially a rebuild at this point. I don't know about Gardner Minshew. He did look good in some spots last year. I think that maybe giving him a veteran to kind of make him compete for the starting job at this point is probably plausible at this point. So, yeah, Jacksonville is like, they're in sort of rebuild mode right now. I don't expect much from them in 2020. But in terms of the draft and free agency, I do think that they'll make some moves to try and start the rebuilding process here. So, in the chat room here, just want to give a shout out to the homegirl Kia. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to you, Miss Kia. Appreciate you in the chat room. Appreciate the support and all that good stuff. And so, I got a couple minutes before I just take a slight break, and then when I get back, I'll have my homie on here, the mayor of Billionsburg, on here to talk some New York sports. But I did want to give a quick shout out to LeBron James and Zion Williamson, because last week they had a couple of good games against each other. It was Pelicans versus Lakers, and actually the first game was later that Tuesday, right after me and Maestro got off the show. LeBron had a really good game in that first one. 40 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. Zion Williamson, also a pretty good game, for what he's done in the first 16 games. 29 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. And then you go to this game this past Sunday night where the game was closer toward the end. Buckets were being traded back and forth. And LeBron showed up when he needed to show up. 34 points, 12 rebounds, 13 assists. And Mount Zion, not a bad game. 35 points, 7 rebounds, no assists, but the 35 and 7 is pretty important considering how close that game was. But, a 34-point triple-double for LeBron James, and he's one of the leading candidates for MVP right now, even though I don't believe he's going to win it. I do have him in my top 3 for league MVP right now. And both of those guys, it's kind of like the teacher versus the pupil. You know what I'm saying? Like, you gonna come in and you gonna run this league one day, but right now I'm running this thing right now, and I'm gonna run it for as long as I can. And while I'm here, you're gonna respect it. And so LeBron did his thing. The Lakers are doing their thing for that matter, and Anthony Davis, and I know he's missed a game here or there, but Anthony Davis, I think, is a top 5 league MVP candidate right now with his 26 points and, double-digit rebounds and, assists. I think he leads the team in blocks and all that good stuff. So you got that there. And, looking forward to a couple of more matchups. And actually, me and Maestro, we talked about this before. The Pelicans are not far from that 8th spot. And the Grizzlies right now are going through some injury issues with a couple of their guys, and Ja Morant is still there. He's still healthy, but the schedule gets tougher. You're going to need some extra bodies to come in there and step up. Pelicans' schedule seems to be light. I know the Pelicans and the Grizzlies have a couple of matchups next month, if I'm not mistaken, so I think that's going to play a role. And I got to tell you, a first-round matchup between the Pelicans and the Lakers, while the build-up is going to be off the charts, I honestly think that in the end, the Lakers will probably sweep the Pelicans, even though the build-up will be pretty good. But either team, whether it's the Grizzlies or the Pelicans, even if it's the Grizzlies-Lakers, the build-up won't be as much, but they most certainly might get blown out by the Lakers if the Grizzlies end up with that number 8 seed in the West. So I'm gonna take a break here real quickly. When I get back, I'm gonna have my man on here, Mayor of Billionsburg, gonna talk some New York sports and see what's popping with that. So you're listening to the Barbershop Sports Talk Podcast live on our website, barbershopsportstalkpodcast.com. We'll be right back, folks, in about a couple minutes. Alright, y'all, welcome back. It's the Barbershop Sports Talk Podcast, live on the website, barbershopsportstalkpodcast.com. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter at BarbershopSPOR2, also on the Facebook page at Barbershop Sports Talk Podcast, and on Instagram at Barbershop Sports Talk Podcast as well. So, without any interruption, I just want to introduce the homie, the mayor right here. You guys have heard him many times on this show, in the last few years. He goes by the Hispanic Causing Panic. What do you go by on Instagram right now? I know you'd be changing it up.
Right now, first off, good morning, everybody. I'm saying good morning because I'm coming to y'all live from London. I'm currently on vacation, so, I'm a man. Trey hit me up, so, as a fellow Locked Night, as an old friend, I'll definitely look out for when he needs some assistance. I come and jump in. But yeah, so I'm coming to y'all live. The Panamanian Nightmare in the building.
No doubt.
So, again, good morning, everybody, and let's get it rocking.
No doubt. Yo, that's crazy. So you calling from London literally right now. What time is it over there?
Right now it's 1:36 in the morning London time.
Wow. That's dope, man. That's real dope. So, all right, man, let's get into it, man. So, I guess you've been keeping up with what's been going on here in the States while you're over there in London. So, I've yet to talk about this tonight. So, being that you a New Yorker and I'm a New Yorker, I wanted to bring up the Spike Lee situation with the Knicks. Are you familiar with what was going down with that?
Yeah, I actually saw it the other day on my Instagram feed, so I started doing some research on it to find out what was going on. And then I also caught his interview, I guess it was earlier today, you guys' time,
yep,
on First Take with Stephen A. Smith. And, people are saying you don't have to be a New York Knicks fan to understand the significance of Spike Lee in the Garden. That's like putting ketchup on a hot dog.
Yep.
That's basically how it goes. You can even say Spike came with the building because he's a staple in that building. I think Jack Nicholson at every Laker game, you have Spike Lee at every Knicks game.
Yep.
Whether the Knicks suck or the Knicks are in the playoffs, Spike Lee's there as the most diehard fan, I think, for any sports franchise. How the whole situation played out was super shady. If they complained about him taking the employee entrance, why you wait till when he's damn near 30 years in to complain about it?
Right.
Like, he's been there longer than some of the employees. He's been there longer than Dolan.
Yeah.
He's been thinking that same entrance before even Dolan had the team.
Yeah, he even said on First Take this morning that as a kid, he remembers going back to when the Garden used to be around the corner before they even built the one that's there now. So yeah, Spike Lee has been around.
Yeah, that I don't know what motivated that whole thing. That was definitely a call from higher up. I don't know what's Dolan's problem, but it seems to be an issue with anybody that's a Knick loyalist. For instance, Charles Oakley last season when he got carted out by security.
Mm-hmm.
What was the whole reason behind that? Because he didn't like the direction the team is going. None of us do, but that's not the way you treat Charles Oakley. If there's an issue with him and you want him to leave, politely have security tell him to leave. They'll have him carried out like that on national TV. That's highly uncalled for.
Right.
And then the whole thing with Spike was, if there's an issue with Spike, like, y'all taking his money. He's paying, $300,000 a year, a season for season tickets. Y'all kindly taking his money. And there's an issue with him taking the employee entrance to the court. Yo, call him up. Y'all got his number. Y'all had his number for 30 years. Call him up and say, listen, Spike, for security reasons, can you please not take the employee entrance anymore? We can allow you to come in on the other side of the building with the other VIPs. We can have somebody escort you to the elevator, go on the other entrance. And of course, Spike would be like, all right, cool, whatever. I understand. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that whole thing played out, where he gets into the elevator, security come press him, like if he shoplifted, and be like, yo, can you come outside? No, that's highly uncalled for, highly unnecessary, and I don't blame Spike for saying that he's not coming back to any Knicks games the remainder of the season, and I wouldn't blame him for not coming back ever.
Yeah, so here's my take on it, right? So I'm at the workplace today, and I'm on the computer, and I'm on ESPN.com because I was trying to check a story out. I was trying to look for a detail in one of the stories from a game a few nights ago. And so you know how, if you've ever been on ESPN.com, on the right side of the screen, they always show tweets from ESPN personalities, maybe tweets that has to do with a particular franchise. And so I just happened to look over on that right side of the screen, and I see a tweet from Stephen A. where he's talking about this has got to be the most, Knicks stuff ever, that has to be in relation to Spike Lee. And so once Stephen A. was like, yeah, Spike Lee's coming on at 11 o'clock, I was like, whoa, okay, what happened here? This is like the first I'm hearing about this. So I immediately, got my DirecTV app, put the show on, and listened to exactly what was taking place. And that's when I saw the video that was leaked out by whoever took that video in the hallway there, where Spike Lee was like, why don't you arrest me like you did Oakley? And I got to tell you, that interview, well, first off, Spike Lee, Spike is Spike, so, he's going to talk a certain way to the point where the interview may look or sound a little bit awkward. And that's kind of what it was for me. It was just like, okay, like, I know you Spike Lee, but, get to the point. And the more that interview got going, and even the more like Molly would try to say something and he'd be like, let me finish my story. Or, Molly would interrupt and, Spike Lee would just be, agitated that she, was asking the same question over and over again. And his response was, oh, you got to ask Dolan about that. And so, the more that was happening, to me, it just seemed like this was some kind of publicity stunt of some kind. Like it went from him talking about what happened last night at the Garden to, I remember, the old Knicks back in the 70s. I remember the championship years. And it's like, I'm like, dude, we've heard this many times before. We know how far you go back with this team. We're just trying to figure out what the hell happened last night. And it just seemed like we just kind of got like the PC part of what happened, but not necessarily like, what really, really happened. I don't believe that Spike Lee should be treated that way. I think that if you're the Knicks, I think that situation could have been dealt with a little bit better. So, okay, he wants to enter the Garden on the 33rd Street side, which he's done for, 30 plus years. Okay, fine. And if this is connected to Leon Rose, being the new vice president of the team, by the way, that happened yesterday. If that's connected,
that I'm aware of,
yeah. So if that's connected in any way to where maybe Leon Rose is trying to change some things, then cool. But I think it's important that in the same way he put that press release letter out there yesterday, I think you could have done the same for not just Spike Lee, but all your season ticket holders that, hey, we're going to enter the Garden a different way. And in Spike's case, I believe he should have known ahead of time, okay, we're going to change some things up. And even if they didn't give him the heads up, at least they could have had the courtesy to say, hey, look, Spike, it's just this one time or this last time we're going to let you in through this way, but just know in the next game or future games, you're going to have to enter in on the 31st Street side of the Garden. I think if that was done, this whole thing would have been nullified. But I tell you one thing that I was very happy to see him do in that interview is to finally be pissed off. Because for all these years, and you said it, Mayor, he's been spending, millions of dollars just to come watch the Knicks be crappy all these years. And, even the preseason tickets are expensive. And he was saying that. It's the truth. If you look at the preseason ticket prices, it's just like if you're sitting in the bleachers at a regular, you're sitting in the nosebleed section at a regular season game. Yeah. There's nothing going on in the preseason. So. So, for all these years, and I've said this about a lot of celebrities that were season ticket holders that, don't want to say anything bad about the Garden or don't want to say anything bad about Dolan. And I think I think at one point Woody Allen became a victim of that because he had said something, and then Dolan was like, "All right, you're not gonna sit in this section no more." I believe there's a lot of celebrities that don't want to, like, they want to criticize the Knicks, but they know that if they criticize them in the national media, that their privileges of side court seats, box suites, and all that other good stuff that comes with coming to the Garden, that stuff's out the door the moment you say anything negative about that place, or Dolan for that matter. So
here's my thing, right? Sorry to cut you off. Here's my thing with that. The team has been terrible for quite some time.
Yep.
They had a glimmer of hope when Melo first came to the team that they won the Atlantic Division.
Yep.
And they made the playoffs. That was the one glimmer of hope.
Yep.
After that, it's been pretty downhill after that, and it's just been getting worse as the years progress.
Yeah.
The issue is you're still charging the ticket prices you're charging for these games for a team who's underachieving, underperforming, and no superstar wants to come here now. Before, the Knicks was not even the Knicks, just the Garden itself. Players were killed just to put on the jersey, just to play in that stadium for however many games per season.
Yeah,
there were 41 games. They want to come in there and they want to play. Now, you can't even sniff a high price or high caliber free agent to come in.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep putting out guys who weren't even in the league, guys who weren't even drafted, guys who just literally came off the street. And you wanna set boundaries, like for instance for Spike Lee or for Woody Allen. You want to set boundaries for what? What are you giving me that that all of a sudden you want to give me all these boundaries and all these rules and shit? You're not giving me anything.
Yeah.
Like if these celebrities or like Spike Lee, for instance, or season ticket holders want to make an impact, don't show up to the games. Don't come no more. Stop paying for those tickets. Just don't show up.
And that's the problem, Mayor. That's the problem is that
everybody keeps showing up. So Jim Dolan takes it upon himself to be like, you know what? I don't care.
Yeah.
If you don't show up, whatever. Because I got so and so that has season tickets already. They'll show up. Sponsors will see them, and then they might want to do business with them, and they do it through the Garden, which is great for me. But if these people stop showing up, then you'll see a significant difference in how things are being run. Because it's like, all right, you're not going to bullshit me anymore with a shitty product, a shitty team. We're changing coaches every 2-3 seasons.
Yeah.
It's not even the coach's fault anymore. It's not even the player's fault. It's ownership.
Yep. It's been like that for a long time. Been like that for a long time, man.
You have Steve Mills who's been president of the team for God knows how long, and he's done more harm than good. You have to remember. Look, I'm going to tell you exactly where the downfall of Knicks started.
Mm-hmm.
When they first signed Allen Houston to a $100 million contract. You remember that?
I remember.
That was what? 2000?
2001, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah, 2001?
Yeah.
And he only played, 5 games? Because he blew out his knee and that was it.
Yeah, that was it. That was all she wrote. Next thing you know, the dude is working for him in the front office in some capacity.
Exactly, because he's buddy with the owner.
Yep.
What did that do for the Knicks? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They went through picking up washed up Penny, washed up Marbury. At one point, they had Othella Harrington and Clarence Weatherspoon started. 2 guys who are career bums starting.
Yep.
So, and then you progress. All right, Melo comes in. Great. Melo comes in. We have a good nucleus. We're doing our thing. Got Jason Kidd coming in here as a veteran presence. We're winning. Then, for some strange reason, half that team you don't sign back or you trade, and we're back to sucking again. At some point, these season ticket holders who come and pay all this money to watch this product just don't show up. Yo, don't buy no more season tickets.
Hey, I agree, man. I'm with you 100% in regards to, just not showing up at these games and not putting your money towards, this kind of product in many people's eyes. I don't want to get off topic though, but I was one of the guys that was okay with how the offseason went for the Knicks last year, and people know what I'm talking about. It's Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. They elected to go to Brooklyn and not come to the Knicks. I was one of the fans that said I'm okay with it, and I still stand by it because number one, the Knicks showed nothing but the fact that they had all this cap space and draft picks to show for it. It wasn't like the Brooklyn Nets situation where they were coming off of making the playoffs for the first time in a long time. They were number 6 seed. They had like 40-something wins, and they made the playoffs with a nice nucleus of players, and that sort of kind of set them up to acquire KD and Kyrie in the offseason. Now, both of those guys aren't playing right now, and it's with good reason because of the injuries and all that. But I was okay with the Julius Randle signing. I was okay with some of the other guys that they picked up because I knew that at some point, if the Knicks weren't going to compete for the 8th seed in the East this year, that some of those contracts would be expendable and that they would get draft picks for these guys. And it turns out, with at least the Marcus Morris pick, with the Marcus Morris trade, I should say, that came to fruition. We got a draft pick for him back in the trade. It's exactly what I thought it would be. But other than money and pretty much trying to be like, okay, we're the Mecca of basketball, that was the only thing that the Knicks could pitch to these guys. They didn't have no leverage the way the Nets had leverage or any other franchise that was in position to win right now. The Knicks aren't in a position to win right now. And it kind of it frustrates me to see fans who were expecting to get Kevin Durant frustrated because why are you surprised? It's the same thing. It's nothing new. You knew I knew the moment that he tore his Achilles. I was like, nah, I don't want it. I don't want KD now.
See, the thing with that whole KD move was the whole mentality of it was, all right, we're gonna get KD. All right, so he tore the Achilles. I was one of those who was looking forward to seeing KD in the Garden. Then when it was spoken about Kyrie wanted to come with him, which Kyrie already said in the beginning before the whole KD thing that he wanted to come play the Garden. I was like, okay, so we're gonna start killing now. I get KD's out with the torn Achilles, but when he comes back 100%, it's a wrap. It's gonna be straight up 130-point games every home game. Cool. But then now hindsight, if you fast forward and you look at what's going on now, not even just look at it overall, especially with Kyrie. Yep. Kyrie has a history of injuries.
Yep.
And when he was in Cleveland, remember he had the issue with his knee in Cleveland. That got him out of the finals.
Yep.
He had the issue in Boston with his shoulder and knee. And now he has the same issue with the knee now in Brooklyn. I mean, not the knee, sorry, the shoulder. So the Knicks dodged the bullet. In the beginning, we looked like fools. Because, like, all right, all we had to show for is Julius Randle, Whoopi, and Taj Gibson. Fucking Taj Gibson.
Yeah.
Like, come on. But now we look like geniuses. Like, okay, you avoided having to pay these guys X amount of dollars for damaged goods.
Right, and man, I'm so glad you said this because me and Maestro was debating this a few weeks ago. Look, man, I could imagine had these guys been on, and I'll throw Zion Williamson kind of into the mix too because most Knicks fans wanted the number 1 draft pick. Obviously, we couldn't control that. We settled for the 3 pick.
Yeah.
But at one point this season, all 3 of those guys were sidelined with injuries. And look, rightfully so. It's an injury. You can't help that. But could you imagine if those 3 guys were on the Knicks, what the narrative would have been in the media? They would have been killing this Knicks team. I don't want to hear, they would have got a pass because, they made the right moves. Well... No. You don't... No. You don't get a pass because you have 2 max contracts sitting on the bench hurt. Right.
Then you have who's supposed to be the second coming of LeBron out for the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season with a messed up knee. The same knee that he hurt in college. Yeah. So you're sitting there like, oh boy, here's typical Knicks. That would have been the narrative. That would have been exactly. That
would have been the narrative because, and even with the with the Oakley stuff and with this Spike Lee thing, the Knicks never get the benefit of the doubt because they're always perceived or always in the middle of something that has nothing to do with what goes on the floor. And when it has something to do with what's going on the floor, it's not a very good product that's being put out there. So, you know, for someone to say that, oh, the Knicks would have did something good had they got these guys. No, they wouldn't have. That wouldn't have been portrayed in the media that they did something good. For the media to say that the Knicks did something good, those guys would have to be healthy 100%. They'd have to be on the floor balling every night, and the results would have to show up for the Knicks to kind of be on that positive narrative road again.
But even then, like say for instance, if they did get those guys, and they got everybody, if let's say the perfect storm hit and they got everybody they wanted,
yep,
and they end up making it to the finals, or they end up winning the championship, say this season, that narrative is still going to sit there. Like, what's going to happen next season? Is this going to be a one-hit wonder, and the next season
I kind of disagree with that. You said if they win the chip, then the narrative will still be there?
Yeah, because it's like, for instance, I guess, let's say the Jets, for some god-awful reason, win the Super Bowl next season.
Uh-huh.
It's great at that moment, but then now it's going to be, can they actually repeat what they just did the next season? It's a big difference, like say the Patriots win the Super Bowl. It's already expected. Like, even next season, even if they have a shitty team the following season, you still give them the benefit of the doubt because of who they have.
Okay.
But with a team like the Knicks, if they were to win the championship this season and walk into next season as defending champs, you're still going to look at them like, like, do I really trust this team?
I don't know.
Last year.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think we kind of side differently here. I think the chip for me would say, okay, this solidifies the moves that they made in the offseason, and they finally got it done. Now, they could still criticize Dolan, because Dolan will still be there. I do get that part of it, but I don't think the Knicks would. I don't think the Knicks would still keep that same negative narrative, even coming off of winning a championship. Yo.
Okay. Well, we'll have to wait and see if that ever happens.
Yeah. I want to see one in my lifetime.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Oh my God.
Let's cross our fingers.
Yeah, for real. Hey, man, I want to shift gears, man.
Yeah.
So these Yankees, right? This is one of the seasons, right? This is one of the seasons where if they don't win the damn chip, I'm gonna start riots. I'm gonna flip tables. I'm just gonna be a madman running the streets, because everything that's happened to the Astros this offseason, the way that kind of broke down, the manager gets fired, the GM gets fired. They bring in Dusty Baker, which I think is a good move for him. You see what's happened to the Red Sox. They got rid of their manager. They trade Mookie Betts, their best player. And so now they're kind of scrambling. Everything that's happened around the Yankees and the American League leads me to believe that we should be in the World Series come October. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no excuses. I don't want to hear that the Twins are still good. I don't want to hear that the A's are still good. I don't want to hear the Indians are still good.
That's the thing but that's unfortunately that's the thing we have to throw in there. And you also have to take into account that the Yankees are down 3 pitchers at the moment, because you have Ramon, who's suspended for 60-some-odd games for domestic violence.
Severino's out.
Who's their best pitcher, out for the season.
Yep.
And potentially out even for next season.
Yep.
So then you also have Paxton, who's out till May, early June. So all you left was Garrett Cole and Tanaka.
Right. And Aaron Judge is still injured. Aaron Judge is still dealing with something, so I get it. I get that we got injuries, and you know, that's always a concern.
Giancarlo Stanton, who also tweaks something. Look, he tweaks something getting off the toilet. So we already know he's injury prone. So you already know that they're gonna look at that as PEDs, because he didn't have none of those issues when he was in Miami.
Right.
Once he put on that Yankee uniform, that's when every injury known to man started popping up.
Yeah. He's like the modern day A-Rod. Like, you remember when A-Rod first got to the Yankees and all that pressure was on him, and you know, he would just like not show up in the postseason. Like, that's Giancarlo Stanton right now.
But here's the thing: but A-Rod was healthy, but still not showing up in the postseason. Stanton just doesn't show up at all because he's not healthy.
Yeah.
It's either his knee or his shoulder or something. So, I ain't gonna say it's PEDs, but it's PEDs. And that's the same thing that happened to Chris Davis in Baltimore.
Yeah.
That he had that 150 home run season.
Yeah.
He got a fat contract, and then once they started testing everybody for PEDs, he couldn't hit the ball with glued to his bat.
Oh, dude, that dude, I think he had what was the record? I think he had 50-something straight at-bats without a hit.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because it's crazy because I live in the Baltimore area, and all they talked about that off season was how that dude's streak was still intact. I think from the season that it started all the way into the following next year was when that streak was still going. And, people here just couldn't get their eyes off of it. So, yeah, I get what you mean, man. And, but you got to admit, though, Mayor, you got to admit, even with all the injuries we have right now, we still, at least in the AL East, we're still the favorite, at least in the AL East.
No, of course, we're favored in the AL East. That's a given. The only team I can see giving us a run for our money would be Tampa. Because Tampa's always been that team where, they're very feisty. They might give us a run for our money. Boston, you can count them out right now.
Yeah.
They don't have any pitching. They just traded away their best player and one of the best pitchers on the team. So it's you can clearly see they're in a rebuilding mode.
Right.
So I'm not even counting Boston this season.
Yep.
Again, Tampa's the only team I'm worried about in the AL East. You already know Baltimore's terrible.
Yep.
Toronto's terrible. So they don't even count.
Right. Well, so
as far as the remaining AL, of course, I'm gonna be worried about the Twins because the Twins they added to the nucleus they already had.
Man, we smack them niggas every time we play them in the playoffs, man.
Yo, everybody's due. Listen, everybody's due. That's the thing.
I hear you.
Due. But you have to also remember, a lot of those guys didn't have playoff experience. And then you